the basics of valuation. Okay. And unless people come in and contribute and break in and ask questions, it's going to be a bit of an information overload. Okay. So we need participation from people. And I will continue to ask questions of people, but I need people to also step in. What we'll cover is valuation concepts, principles of values, standards of value, premise of value, valuation procedures, and valuation standards. Now, what is valuation? Valuation is the process of estimating the market value of a financial asset or liability of business or individual. Indian valuation standards say valuation is an economic concept, an estimate of likely price to be concluded by the buyers and sellers of goods or services. It is not a fact, an estimate of likely price at a given time in accordance with a particular definition of value. Now, this first point, valuation is an economic concept. Let me ask Tushar, what does this mean? Valuation is an economic concept.
It is an underlying consideration which is required to be paid by a buyer to the seller.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Yusuf, what do you think? I mean, what does this mean? Value is an economic concept.
I think it has some value to be derived out of whatever valuation we are doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Or Harshad, let me ask you this question now. An estimate, value is an economic concept, an estimate of the likely price to be concluded with buyers and sellers of goods and services. What is the difference between value as an economic concept versus value as a price? I'm not sure if you have Harshad.
Sir, can I answer?
Hello. Yeah, sure.
Hello. Sorry.
Yeah, carry on.
Yes, sir.
Rahul, you want to carry on? Harshad, we'll come to you in a moment. Rahul, why don't you just tell us? What do you think?
So price is what price it has been attached in the market. But economic concept means it is just a value. It does not hold true for everyone, and everyone may not accept that that value which is there in the valuation report.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
just
So value
based on
is
assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is what it should be worth. Okay. Price is a fact.
Price is a fact. Okay. It is an assumption. Yes. Valuation is an assumption.
Value is what it should be worth.
Correct.
But price is the fact. It is the fact is what is actually what the rate at which a transaction takes place. What it is really worth may not be reflected in the price. Okay.
Right.
But it's an estimate, however, of a likely price at which the value is to be concluded by the buyers and sellers of the value. And it is something which is again at a particular point of time. So at different points of time, the value can change. Okay, that's something to be kept in mind. Harshad, once you unmute and you're able to speak, we will get in touch with you. So let us know when you're able to speak. Okay, please share the screen. Let me go back. Yeah, so you can see the screen again. Yes. It is not a fact, an estimate of a likely price at a given time in accordance with a particular definition of value. Now, what are the sources for defining value? The sources for defining value are relevant statutes, case law, contracts and agreements, professional bodies. And Anil Sanka, are you able to unmute? Okay, so Anil is, I think, not able to be there. Or Mr. B.R. Prasad, the difference between value and price. Prasad, are you able to unmute? B.B. Prasad. No, I think that what we are having is a situation where some of the people are not able to, have just taken a break probably. Okay, now the difference between value and price. Price indicates the amount at which a particular transaction is bought or sold in open market in a particular transaction. Cost is the amount you spend to produce the asset, and value is what the buyers believe the asset is worth to them. Okay, so these three concepts have to be kept in mind because they tend to be used in accounting also. Cost is typically what you use in asset in accounting. Value is when we fair value an asset, and price is what the price at which a transaction actually takes place. These concepts are important to keep in mind. Okay, now what are the purposes of valuation? Valuation can be used in business purchase.
Value. Hello.
Yeah.
Value is also investment value. So at that time, it is not only buyer, it is also sellers.
Right.
So I think you need to include both this one, both buyer and seller, the informed decision and their investment values. Sometimes the investor who is going to he is not looking beyond the. He may look beyond the price, beyond the value, as a strategic one.
Right. Yeah, that's right, Dwarkanath.
Sir, in the case of gifting a share, where is the question of buying and selling, sir? There?
Yeah,
Gifting,
but
gifting.
yeah,
Gifting.
gifting is, there is still a value at which it is gifted, right? Earlier we had the gift tax, or even now we have a gift tax, not between.
That is true, but there is no question of buyer and seller there. That concept will not be there. As you said in the definition.
His point was okay. See, his point was okay because value is what the buyer believes the asset to be worth to them. Value is what, okay, this is the person who wants to buy the asset is what he believes the asset is worth to him. Now, the seller is also somebody who believes that an asset is worth something. So value becomes basically person specific. Okay, that's a point which you have to keep in mind. Value can be person specific.
Okay.
Okay. Now, valuation for transactions, purpose of valuation for transactions, which is a business purchase, a sale, merger and acquisition, reverse merger, recapitalization, restructuring, LBO, MBO, management buy-in, buy-sell agreements, IPO, ESOP, buyback of shares, project financing, and others. We use valuation for court cases. So I think that recently, just last week, Ravi held a program on valuation for disputes, where a person was quite knowledgeable in that was making the presentation. So there's valuation for bankruptcy, contractual disputes, ownership disputes, dissenting and oppressive shareholder cases, divorce cases, intellectual property disputes, and others. Valuation for compliances, which is in fair value accounting, and for tax issues. And valuation for planning, which is estate planning, financial planning, mergers and acquisitions planning, and strategic planning. Now, what are the principles of valuation? Number one, it is point of time specific. I think that when we get into some of the questions and answers, I would appreciate if people can just put on their videos also so that we can see each other. This will make things a little bit easier to handle. So let me ask Sindhu Hegde, what does this mean? Valuation is point of time specific. I think Sindhu's also taken a break.
Hello.
Yeah, Sindhu, yes.
Yeah.
Put on your video also so that people can see what is it that. Let's get that feedback.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
carry on.
as we discussed, the valuation as on date is what it is going to be. So, that is what it means.
Okay. So the value as of today.
It is time specific.
Yeah. So point of time specific, Sindhu, is basically that whatever is the value today, after 1 year, the value could be different, right? And this is purely by principles of discounting. That is, suppose something is worth 100 today, just by sheer passage of time and by earning more money during that 1 year period, the value at the end of 1 year will be 1.25.
Yeah.
If it is 125, it will be worth. Correct? 100 today will be worth 125 after 1 year, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me ask this. Valuation depends on the ability of business to generate discretionary cash flow. Shankar, KPM.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, put on your video also, Shankar. Let's see what. Yeah. Can you explain what that means? Ability of a business to get discretionary cash flow.
It depends on the business then there could be there is no there may be cash flow, whether into cash flow or there is no cash flow in business, so it is very tough to um, define value.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whether it could be generate cash flow or not, like it is a crisis, business crisis.
Mhm. Okay. So the point of this is that the whole point of running a business is to generate cash flow, to generate money. So the ability of a business to generate that cash flow by following a certain strategy is what really creates the value in a business. That's the point there. Then the third one, market forces have a great impact of value. Have a great impact on
There
value.
is a word
Here
there,
again,
discretion. There is a one word generate discretionary cash flow. What do you how do you explain the discretionary cash flow? Cash flow is okay.
that's a good point, Ashish. So, see, the normal method in which we use this term discretionary cash flow is that we say that we normally use this in relation to controlling stake. So we use the term discretionary in that context typically, which is that when we say that the ability of a person to decide the future course of the business will be able to help him to decide what is the course of action he will take in a business. So, for instance, suppose we take, let us say, the promoter of Indigo. Indigo promoter, let us say, he has used his funds initially to create value in the airline business. But at some point of time, he decided, let us say, that the cash flows which is generating out of the business, he will take it back into, let us say, his holding company, and he will use it in luxury business in providing uh, he will get into the luxury segment. Okay. So the valuation of his holding company, therefore, would be dependent upon the ability of a business of the promoter using the money in a certain course of action. Okay. So from the point of view of controlling interest, it says basically that he has the discretion to where to use the money, where to invest it, and how to generate cash flows. So therefore, there is a value to controlling stake. However, the discretionary cash flow of a business on its own, see, like you say, in a business, we have the ability to generate cash flows. And this cash flow is, what is the discretion in it? It is just a cash flow which is generated by following a certain course of action. Okay. However, the value of a business to change that course of action and to generate additional cash flows is something which can be discretionary. I think that's basically the point which you're making here. You
No,
have the
in
ability.
case of discretionary, what I understand here that the discretion in the other companies which the cash flow is generated and what additional or extra you are generating here. But therefore, I don't think that would depend. The value will depend on that. Yes, you can say that if you are generating additional cash flow, then the value will increase or decrease. But the discretionary, what I am not understanding here to link with the value depend on the ability to business generate the cash flow.
Okay. So we'll set this aside for a moment while I'll cover it again. I mean, before we close, I will come back to this again to you, Ashish. There is a point here on discretionary cash flow as to why we are including the term discretionary cash flow. I'll come back to this. Okay. I'll leave this open.
Abraham, Manoj here. If you want, I can answer, this.
Yes,
there are enterprise whose objective is not to generate the cash. It is to create the value for that organization itself. For example, some company, they just develop some product and they want to sell it. Their idea is to not to build the enterprise. Their objective is to make some organization, develop some product and sell it. And it is some other organization who will take this product and will generate the cash out of it. So there are many startups whose objective is not to build the enterprise, not to generate the cash. It is just to build the product, to make it marketable, and somebody else will generate the cash flow for that.
Right. Okay, but I will still come back to Ashish because a very important, valid question as to what does this discretionary cash flow mean? As all of us understand cash flows, but what is this point here of discretionary? I'll come back to you on this. Okay. But let me move on now. Market forces have a great impact on value. So here, let me ask, who's a stock market participant outside of Tushar, who is, I think, a merchant banker. So,
Sir, it is a competition.
okay, market forces have a great impact on value. Who's answering this? Gajendra?
Sir, I guess one simple example could be, let's say, COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. So market forces have a great impact on value, right? I mean, the moment COVID was there, the market went down by 35%, right? And then after
Correct.
that, it's recovered by another.
I have a little different opinion here.
No,
COVID-19.
force majeure. COVID-19 is force majeure actually. It's not a market force actually.
Okay, so that's Chakka Kumar. Let Tushar come back to you.
It can be considered competition in the market, demand and supply. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
So it can be competition in the market and the peer competitors.
Right. So market
the government rules and regulations. Hello.
Yeah, that's right. Government rules and regulations also will have an impact. That's also a market force. Government rule and regulation is also a market force.
International transactions?
International transactions in what sense?
Like Jio and Facebook, what happened 2 days back?
Okay, so the valuation of Reliance went up, correct. You're absolutely right. Okay, so there are good examples there of why market forces have a great impact on value. Then the principle of risk and return. So here, let me ask, this is an economic concept. So let me just ask, I think BB Prasad is now online, he says. So BB Prasad, you want to tell us what does this mean, the principle of risk and return? No, I think we are not able to hear Prasad. So let me ask somebody.
Can I, sir? Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Tell us, Prasad.
Where the opportunity cost of capital, what we invest today, is much lower than what we are going to get in return. Probably there is a positive return, because of which I think, the risks what they take today or sacrifice today, I think is much lower than the returns what they expect in the long run. Certain sacrifices being done today. So that is the trade-off between the risk and the return.
Okay. So let me ask this question of a bank fixed deposit. The return which we get is 6%, let's say.
Yes, sir.
And the investment in equity market, we get a return which may be about 11% to 15%.
Yes, sir.
Let's assume. So which is the higher risk instrument?
Definitely equity would be the higher risk instrument.
Okay. And with the higher return is also from the equity market, correct?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, definitely, sir.
So the basic principle is higher the risk, higher should be the return.
Yes, sir. Yeah, always. It's always directly proportional to that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Now, when we get into a more detailed thinking about risk and return, then you will get into volatility and so on, which we will hold for a moment till we come to valuation in a spreadsheet. Okay. Now, the principalness of reasonableness and reconciliation of values. So, is there anybody who has done real estate valuations here? No. Okay. Or let me just ask, what does this mean? Principle of reasonableness and reconciliation of values. This, let me ask. Parimal Rao.
Sorry, Abraham, I would not have an answer to that.
Okay, you don't have an answer to reasonableness and reconciliation of value.
Yeah.
Anybody has an answer, or shall I take it on?
Sir, would that mean that one should be reasonable enough not to overestimate or underestimate the assumptions that we are using while coming up to derive a value of the real estate product that is involved?
Okay, that's a good stab at taking the answer there. Anybody else wants to take, or I will just.
Sir, is it when there is an inventory and we have to value for the real estate, then management will be of a view that the market price is XYZ, but at least given the current market scenario, other factors, total inventory across the project and the area, that's why one has to be reasonable enough. Though one is saying that the selling price is X, but it could be X minus 2. That's what one has to estimate.
Okay, so let me just look at two. I'll break this down into two parts. One is reasonableness, and the other part is reconciliation of values. And let me also cover this, the influence by the value of net tangible assets. Now, reasonableness. Now, in relation to a business which is, let us say, a Tata Steel. Okay, if you take a Tata Steel, now Tata Steel, if it has a huge value of plant and machinery and land and buildings, okay, now the valuation of that is more likely to be determined by the value of the plant and machinery which has been put in place as planned to generate, to create the product. Let me say that is, and the value of the IP in that whole process will be comparatively limited. Let us say that the value of the assets will drive, let us say, 90% of the value. Is this a fair thing to say?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And IP will drive only about 10% of the value. Okay. However, if you take a software company, it's very likely in a product software company that the IP is going to drive 90% of the value of the business.
Yes, completely reverse of Tata Steel.
Yeah. Okay. So, principle of reasonableness, what does it mean? If it is a type of a business where the business, you have to see the nature of the business, and the reasonableness of the IP in relation to the overall value has to be assessed. And you can see that is also on net tangible assets. If you look at the net tangible assets, the higher the value of net tangible assets, the more the value of a business is likely to be normal circumstances. Okay, so that's another factor which you would keep in mind. Okay, now let's look at the reconciliation of value. I do a valuation as per a DCF method and come to 100 crores as the value of, let me take, or let me say the same example of Facebook buying in Jio. Now, how much was the value of that business, Swati?
10%, 45,000 crores.
Yeah.
4,50,000 for the entire company.
It was a
50,000.
10% stake, but value-wise, I am not.
Okay, about 45,000 crores is what somebody has said. So 45,000 crores, say 10% is the value of that business. Okay, now let us assume for the moment, based upon cash flows, DCF method, the value of Jio today is, let us say, 100,000 crores. Okay. However, Facebook has come in at a valuation of 450,000 crores. Okay. So when you're doing a reconciliation, that is a market transaction. So that is a market approach. Now you've done a DCF valuation on the basis of Jio generating, let us say, and say that the value is 45,000 crores. Okay, so JSR Chavan is saying that the value of Jio was 450,000 crores, let us say, is the value as per the market. But the value as per the DCF income approach is, let us say, 100,000 crores. So what you do when you're doing a valuation is that you would try to reconcile two methods. You do an income approach and then you reconcile it against a market approach and see, is that really what the market is saying the value of the company is? Okay, so that's basically what this point means. Now, value is influenced by liquidity. Now, here, let me ask for those who have done startup companies.
Isn't it the reasonableness of reconciliation in relation to the projections which we have made on the basis of which valuation is being done? Those are reasonable, and reconciliation is the value means the estimates made and achievable, whether they are achievable or not, we have to judge those things.
Yeah. So, Ashish, let me say that when it comes to reconciliation of values, okay, see, reasonable is okay. You've followed a certain set of assumptions. You have done a certain valuation. Now, the reasonableness of those assumptions have to be tested, definitely. Okay. And I gave you another example in relation to, is the bulk of the valuation going to be for plant and machinery, in which case the bulk of the value should lie with the plant and machinery value, not with IP value. Okay. So you have to test your assumptions. That would be reasonableness. Now, reconciliation of values, you would use alternative methods. Okay. What you do by one method, if you have an alternative method, is it giving you a completely different valuation? If the valuation range is so huge, okay, the difference is so huge, starkly different, then you have to find a way of reconciling the two as to why would it be different. So let us say, for instance, same geo example. If based upon DCF, we are saying that based on all reasonable projections, the valuation cannot exceed 100,000 crores. But Facebook has bought in at 450,000 crores. Okay, that is
I think here the difference of the valuation. Now go to the point number 2. That's the differential has been given by the Facebook due to the discretionary cash flow which is generated through the Facebook being the presence in India as a partner.
Yeah.
So here the discretionary cash flow. Now I got this meaning of this discretionary cash flow which is generated by the person who is investing. The value is he's having the value other than the cash flow of the geo.
Yeah. So what you're saying, I think from what I understood of what you're saying, Ashish, is that Facebook wanted to enter the Indian market in a big way. So rather than only give a value to the discretion, to the cash flow of the business, okay, to the cash flow of the business, which is, let us say, based on cash flow, they should have paid only, let us say, 10,000 crores. In actual fact, they paid 45,000 crores. So 35,000 crores is their cost of entering the Indian market in a big way to be able to do various other things together with Reliance or with Jio. So the value is not only the Jio business, the value is probably something else. It may be beyond that.
Yeah, value is for the cash flow which will be generated by the Facebook itself. Facebook by its own products, by marketing directly through the Jio in India. Because that is the additional cash flow which we have not valued anywhere when we are valuing the DCF of the Jio. That is the discretionary cash flow which will be benefited only to the Facebook, not to the Jio.
Okay. So that's a very good point. And I think that you've answered your question yourself. So then I don't have to come back to discretionary cash flow. Thanks for that, Ashish. Okay. So now this other point, let me ask this. Valuation is influenced by liquidity. What I'm realizing more and more is that if I have a question which needs to be answered, we will all go to Ashish and ask him for the answer. So he will probably come up with a good answer here. So let me ask Pramendra Gupta, if you're on. Pramendra?
Pramendra, yes, sir.
Okay. So give me an answer as to value is influenced by liquidity. What does this statement mean?
So liquidity means the value, the shares which we are valuing should be marketable and can be sold to a willful buyer. If you value a company and it does not have a market, so liquidity is not there. So the valuation will drastically reduce to that extent. So it depends on or the sector in which they are in, where there is no much marketability of this shares of or the value to the business, then the liquidity fails.
Okay, so basically you will pay more money for a company for something which is a liquid asset, and you will pay less if it is illiquid. So real estate is illiquid. So will you pay less for it as compared to stock market? Will there be an illiquidity discount?
Definitely yes.
For real estate, yes. Okay, good. That's a point which we'll have to keep in mind. Okay, now the principles of the value of minority interest is less than the value of controlling interest. And this I brought it in another context where I said that because you have the ability to decide on what the company is going to be doing, therefore the controlling stake does have a higher value than an illiquid, than a minority interest. Okay, so here let me ask Rajat Mishra.
Can I just have one point, sir? Can I just make one point, sir?
Yeah.
So to a little extent, even the valuation does have a bearing on the sentiments also, sir. Whenever there is an upswing in the economy or whenever there is some, what you call it as, the economy is doing quite well, I think probably because too many people will be chasing the same thing, I think the automatically the valuations also would undergo a great northward movement.
Okay, but liquidity by itself is that. See, liquidity. What do we mean? That the stock market is ensuring that your assets are highly liquid. You can buy and sell at any point of time in the stock market. Let's assume.
Yeah.
However, an unquoted stock is illiquid. Okay, the principle is very clear. Stock market liquid, unquoted it's illiquid. Okay.
Can you go back to the earlier slide, sir?
Yeah.
Sir, this is generally called a general principles of valuation. So, somewhere we have stated, it's for real estate transaction. We cannot confine to a particular class of asset. It is a general principle that we are talking about. Even the reconciliation, you can, even the standard, you can choose any method. You can value on two different methods, but two different methods will give you two different value. But we should be in a position to reconcile it. So I want to say that it is a general principle. We cannot confine to a particular class of asset. Do you agree with me, sir?
Yes. It's not only real estate, it's all.
That's what. It's applicable to all.
Yes.
Even the reconciliation, whatever. Why the reconciliation comes? If the value difference is coming, we go to see why the difference is coming. That's what we are calling as reconciliation.
Correct.
So it is only a general principle. You cannot apply, say it's a liquidity, all that it's a general principle. We cannot apply this to a particular class of asset.
Yes, you're right. It applies across the board to everything. You're right. I had introduced real estate for certain other reasons. I was trying to bring in an example for real estate, but it's something which applies across the board to all assets, these principles.
Yeah. Sir, I need some more explanation for a discretionary cash flow, which I'm not able to understand.
Okay, so we'll come back to that then later on, Surya Narayan. You're putting it back on me. I thought that we were past it with Ashish giving up on the need for getting an explanation. We'll come back to it, Surya Narayan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sir, may I try and attempt the discretionary?
Yeah, sure, Rajat. Go ahead.
Okay. See, ultimately, any value which is being derived is, and since you're kind of using the discounted cash flows, the one who is, and I'm assuming that we are actually doing this valuation from an equity shareholder's perspective. Now, in a business, there could be various restrictions which could be put in by different stakeholders. Maybe at times, bankers can put in depending upon the debt covenants that you have, and there would be certain cash flows which probably is logged and cannot be used for a certain specific purposes. So discretionary is something which is generated by the business, and there is full authority or right available by the the stakeholders who are getting the valuation done to use the cash as per their requirements. Now, if the cash flow is restrictive in nature, then obviously that needs to be kind of taken off and should not probably be forming part of the cash flows and the valuations.
That's a good point. That is, if restricted cash flows are there, they are going to the value of that particular part of the restriction, whereas discretionary cash flows are going towards the valuation of the business. That's the point which you're making. Yeah.
Yeah. As the word itself says, the discretionary is absolutely free cash flows which is generated and can be used by the one who's getting the valuation done.
Normally we use free cash flows as a fair word here rather than discretionary to eliminate that kind of confusion which is going on.
Yeah, so free cash flows is what we use, right, Amit? Okay.